So,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm not going to say his name because he may get in trouble, but he was saying he's a great podcast fan. And he said he listens to all these podcasts. And sometimes when he gets back home, he stays in the driveway to finish the episode before he goes inside. And I said, man, that's fantastic.
That is
So I said, oh,
wonderful. We
wow.
applaud that.
Yeah, we applaud that. Yes, and he doesn't just do it with our podcast. He listens to a lot, but he says, and I would say, wow, that's a podcast. That's a fanboy.
It's
So shout
brilliant.
out.
It's absolutely
You
true.
know,
You know who you are.
who you are, and thanks for listening.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the BPM 360 podcast. My name's Casper, your host, and with me is, as always, my friend and co-host, Russell. Russell, how are you, my friend, and where are you?
Hi, Caspar. It's I'm back home again. As you know,
Okay.
I was in Hamburg yesterday, and I managed to get a train this morning. Really nice, crisp winter weather in Hamburg. Snow was, not melting, so it was like, in the train, it's always beautiful when there's a lot of snow around because you're just shooting through the landscape, and to the left and right, you just see these white fields, not just some brown mass. So there,
Yeah.
it's wunderbare Winterlandschaft, as they say in Germany.
Yeah.
So I
Winter
really
Wonderland.
enjoyed getting back after a fantastic day in Hamburg.
Cool. Well, we'll get to that towards the end of today's episode, because I got some questions about that. I obviously, and we produced a short episode on that we shared on LinkedIn earlier in the week that we are recording this. So you can check that. It's quite a hilarious little short. Just be careful and please mind the banner behind Russell. It has a life of its own. That's all I'm going to say about it. So, I mean, let's come back to Hamburg in a bit. In this episode, I want to do something that we did in one of the earlier episodes as well. I just want to review with you the news that we have in the BPM sector, and then BPM defined as broadly as possible. So think about process intelligence, AI, business transformation, change management, all these kinds of topics. And let's see if there's anything that was published in the last 7 to 10 days, and see if there's anything interesting that we have an opinion on, Russell. I'm sure that we have an opinion on many things in this
Yep.
list. All right, let's just go through and see what we have. And the first one is actually, I would say, quite interesting. It's a story from SiliconANGLE, and it says context graph challenge defines 2026 AI agent success. So by the way, for the people listening to this, you don't see it, but for the people watching the video, we have a list of topics that we go through. You can see, you can read, you can see the actual links, and we'll put the document or the links in the show notes. So coming back to that, Russell, we're talking about AI, and we're talking about a context graph, and I just want to set the scene a little bit here. I honestly believe, and we've talked about this, is that AI needs guardrails. And I think that the way that the guardrails are defined for AI come in the form of a graph, a context graph. And that is basically the connection and the collection of all the processes and other enterprise artifacts that are connected to each other, so that AI knows this is where I need to stay within. So how do you think about that one?
First of all, I'm chuffed to see that the term graph and graph database is becoming much more common in the area where we've been, for years talking about process repositories and process documentation, and the understanding now is more and more that these various enterprise objects and their relations need to be captured in a way to really understand what is happening. And so also, as we've been talking about the AI capable of actually having structured and unstructured data, and using that as a context for analyzing what is happening, and identifying pain points, bottlenecks, and risks around organizations, also helping people interpret what is happening, and how they can deal with the business. This is all, I think, great stuff to see that there is more and more real in-depth understanding of what it needs. What I also think interesting about out this article is that it does go down. They says, but they say that everybody will claim it that they will have this context graph in whatever form, but ultimately they will still be struggling a lot, and mainly because the actual in-depth, let's say, enterprise data still won't be all available in a way that they're, let's say, the AI or whatever applications you have will have access to it. So you still have data silos, and there will still be, not like a complete vision or view on all this data. And interesting that they mention specifically Celonis and Palantirs as the
Yeah.
ones that
Yeah.
have the right approach here. Although when I see this article, I would also say that SAP with Joule has that vision. I mean,
Hmm.
that's clearly
Yeah.
that they want to go beyond process intelligence. They want to bring in their benchmarks. They want to bring in the let's say insights from the business objects, but also the events, but also all normal, let's say, normal transactional data. But, and that's the thing, that's the vision.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
2026, are we going to see it in 2026? I
I'm not
don't
sure.
think so. Exactly.
Yeah.
So the article has a real point that I think that's now where everybody understands this is where we have to go. There's various platforms that have a vision on how to get there with slightly different approaches, I would say, but still have that in as a vision. And I'm really, I think it's great that there's a journey happening that I think will create humongous value for the companies, but also for us as consultants.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. I agree with that one. Um, the interesting thing as well in this article, it brings back a term that simply won't perish, and in this case they call it a digital representation of the enterprise, which is commonly known as a digital twin. But I think now the difference with 10 years ago when we used the term digital twin is that we have much more sources of information and many more capabilities of linking things together. So from that perspective, it's interesting to see that it comes back again.
We can even dig down that one, because then we're gonna, we talked about the unified model, and
Yep.
and so if you think about now the different layers and the different aspects and views on an enterprise that you are now pulling together in the context of, let's say, the digital twin of the enterprise, um, the limitations of the, let's say, old school methodologies are becoming very apparent.
Yes.
And that's
Yeah.
something where I'm also interesting to see how, you could say, I don't care. I just put all the data together and AI will sort its way through. But to really give it context, you have to map and create the graph. Ultimately, you have to
Yeah.
have some idea on how you organize as I said, the layers and the relations and the
Yeah.
objects in a manner that it doesn't become complete blurred mass. That's going to be a super interesting journey.
Absolutely. And this segues very nicely into the second story that we have in our weekly brief here is that the AI Expo 2026 that took place highlights governance as agentic enterprise foundation. And to me, it's like finally we understand that you need to have not only a digital enterprise or a digital twin, but you also need to put decent governance on top of that. Um, so I'm not sure how it is for other people, and I'm dying to get your insight into this as well, Russell. But for me, it's like finally common sense starts to sink in, and we start to work on the things that might not be as sexy as AI and vibe coding, but you really need the foundational stuff in place before you move on with the, let's say, the widespread versions of agentic AI topics. How do you look at that?
And absolutely. And what is really cool actually is that talking to Mirko yesterday, he, in one of his LinkedIn articles not too long ago, he summarized the findings of, we also contributed our two
Oh,
minute
yeah, yeah. The topics.
trend
Yeah.
2026. And he said, so, and what he states there is that he's astonished that how that actually the main point that is that is mentioned is not AI in itself, but it's BPM fundamentals.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and fundamentals is governance ultimately.
Yes.
So people are now realizing, and exactly so what Mirko summarized from the feedback he got from all these people he asked is that, yeah, okay, so now we understand what AI can do and can't do. um, Now we know that we have to set a foundation of, let's say, governance, yeah, to actually make this to really move forward. Before we move forward, we now have to go back and set a foundation, and then we can then start, really, let's say, harvesting and implementing AI in a manner that is not going to create havoc. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's absolutely really fits one to one to what I also perceive on the market.
Yeah, and then it's the reason why every time I'm working with a new client that wants to implement the principles behind BPM, my first point of action is doing a workshop with them on the fundamentals of BPM.
Mm.
Are we aligned on definitions, on terms, on what it means for you before we start talking about how you model a process? That is something that comes like in step 6 or 7. First, we need to go through a number of different things. So yeah, I agree with you there. It is foundational, and I'm very happy that I see a growing interest and a growing importance and realization that we need to get this right.
Mhm.
Otherwise, AI will simply fail. So that's interesting. And then there's another one that I would like to run by you. This is the third story from IBM in this case, where they position 2026 as an orchestration over models year. That sounds really interesting. But they basically claim that the market has reached a commodity point where the model itself is not the main differentiator. And then when I read that, it's like, yeah, but that is already known for a while, at least with some of the people in the industry. It's not the fact that you have a model that differentiates you. It's what do you do with it? And probably that has everything to do with the products that they're offering, but they think that orchestration is now the new hype thing, which partly I can completely understand. Um, but I also think, like the same as with AI, make sure that you got your fundamentals in place before you venture into this particular brand of cognac. What say
So,
you?
uh, so interesting to see that the Chinese year of the orchestration over models is in 2026.
Yeah.
Well, the article came out 1st of January. It wasn't the Chinese New Year. So
No, no, that's later.
so
Yeah, absolutely.
okay, so we have now the and what I think is, yes, we know that now that everybody's digging into orchestration. But coming back to the other article, foundation isn't there, governance still has to be worked on. Do people really know and use single AI, let's say, assistants in a manner that they really, are understanding and really using them at their best? By far not. Yeah, so the models themselves, from a technology perspective, may get to a level of commodity in the sense of they're really good,
Yeah.
but the let's say the deployment and the usage of them is still, they are completely underutilized. So in their
Yeah.
potential that they can bring even without orchestration. Now that the market leaders like EBM, that have definitely been doing a lot, in this field for decades, that of course, are now jumping on this like trend now that orchestration is a big thing. And I've seen some unbelievable showcases around orchestration where I said, wow, this is the next level. But I still think when we're talking about deployment, not R&D and development, but when I'm talking about
Hmm.
deployment, I think the companies still have to adopt to the level of what is really possible with the commodity AI models.
Yeah.
No, they're right, but also, yeah, the market is lagging behind, and the things are getting more and more complex. So I'm wondering, when will uh, we get to the stage where we say, yeah, everything that you can do with non-orchestrated AI is being done at companies, and now we're
Yeah.
going to deploy the next level of orchestration. Because if you just piggyback and directly jump onto the orchestration level without really knowing what the capabilities of each of the agents or assistants are that you're coordinating, well, that's not going to work, is it? I mean, it's like
Yeah,
having a you have a super project manager, but then you have a team of people that don't really know what they're doing. That's not going to
yeah.
work. You know?
No, I agree, and I mean it's the same mantra as we've seen with automation, which of course is the predecessor of orchestration. Is you optimize first before you automate. If you
Yeah.
automate something that doesn't work, it still doesn't work. It just fails quicker. And or it just delivers a failed result faster, whatever it is. It's the same with orchestration. If you orchestrate something that doesn't work, your orchestration also won't work. So you really need to be at least at a certain level of maturity before you can enterprise wide at least start to implement these kind of new technologies. At least
Hmm.
in my view.
Yeah.
And which, by the way, it's a segue. If we scroll down a little bit, and there's two
Yeah.
articles, and one is a partnership of 200 million in agentic AI integration between OpenAI and Snowflake, and the other one is Oracle announces a 50 billion infrastructure expansion for AI agents, which is
Well,
I
that's a jump, isn't it? I mean, I thought 200 million went, well, that's not bad a
no.
deal. But yeah, 200 million, forget it. I've got a 50 billion.
So I mean, and of course we take this seriously. Don't get us wrong, dear listeners. But I come back to this again. If you want to spend that amount of money on AI agents, you need to have the foundational stuff in place and to a sufficient enough maturity level. Otherwise, it will simply result in chaos. And even if I'm not sure if what your experience is, Russell, here, but if I go over my timelines on either Substack or LinkedIn or sometimes even Instagram already. It is all AI agent, agentic AI, and they very often position it as, well, you do this, everything else that you're doing is legacy, doesn't matter anymore. And I think that's rubbish. I think that there's an enormous potential in all that AI stuff, but I don't think that that most companies have the foundation that is needed for that.
And I mean, on the big economics, I mean, when I see 50 billion, it's mind boggling. I
Yes, it is.
can't comprehend that, And so to what level on the economy do you have to then what do you have to do to actually get the return on that, and how does that whole thing work out? I have no idea. But yeah, I mean that's the fun. But even on the 200 million level, I mean that's more in an area where I say, okay, with Snowflake and the revenues and what they aim for in their strategy, thinking big, that doesn't shock me so much.
Yeah,
And
true.
I think that very clearly we're talking about the digital twin. We're talking about that the graphs, like the enterprise graphs, they need to be set up. And from a technology perspective, I think Snowflake does understand that this is a chance. So I don't think
Yeah, sure.
because they grew and they already had a great potential even before AI, just on bringing all these different data sources into a layer that could be better. Let's say you could service data in a much more standardized form and a much bigger scale. So although you had like SAP with HANA in memory, quick and fast and fantastic like accessibility to data for real time decisions, the big enterprise, just has so much data that I think Snowflake has a great concept there, and the potential to use that as a baseline for building up these enterprise graphs is of course understandable why they're going down this direction. So it makes absolute sense for me.
Hmm.
But coming back to your original story, so it ultimately gonna is it, are we gonna are the companies gonna earn money with it? So I think really talking about all these AI pilots failing, and it's so much hype around getting to the next level orchestration, getting to the next level full enterprise graph, but we just need to find more cases where somebody's just got a good business and a solid normal, let's say, bricks and mortar business, and AI is just helping them get, I don't know, 1 or 2% more bottom line,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then amounting that up to a success story without bringing up these. That's I'm not saying overhyped, but these this is going to completely change my business. No, but if you um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and this is where the sanity around governance and the sanity around doing it in a structured manner, thinking what is my pain, in, not always thinking I have to reinvent my business completely. We had that phase as well,
Yeah.
when everybody was having startups and everything. And
Yeah.
sometimes
True.
something fantastic happened, but ultimately 90% of the business stayed as it was, had some ideas on diversing their business, getting more into service oriented and not just selling products. So there'd been some fantastic things happening. Let's just be a bit humble and say, that people have been doing some fantastic business for 100 years. And in some areas, AI will really have a significant impact in that area. But that overall, it'll be, to a certain extent, business as usual still has to continue and will continue.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with that. So, all right. Interesting. So I think that's enough AI for now. Let's see
Oh,
what we
yeah.
have on non-AI topics. Well, that's orchestration. We just talked about that. Let me just see what we have. So we're just going to move on a little bit. So,
So,
fuck it. Sorry. Again, AI. So
so maybe you have to reprompt
yeah, yeah,
your news
maybe I
crawler
do.
and say,
No, but yeah,
please just try to do
yeah,
a deep research on interesting topics that are not
yeah,
about
yeah, yeah, yeah,
AI. So you just talking about buzzwords and stuff like
yeah.
that. Everything goes. Oh, what's that now? Yeah, supply chain leaders emphasize people over technology. Now that's a
Oh,
message.
yeah, but you wanna skip the only 1 in 50 AI investments are actually transformational? You wanna pass that one up?
Oh
We'll
no
pass
no
that
no
one
no.
up for now.
Sorry, it's okay. But yeah,
No, no, no. But I mean,
but yeah, but being
I
there, we've talked
yeah, I
about
think
that.
we talked about that. This is just an extension of what we talked about. So indeed, let's talk about the supply chain leaders emphasize people over technology, which is a news from SAP News. I think they did a survey, and they work with a lot of their customers. Um, I think this is something that if you work in technology, it might sound very profound. If you ever done any work in change management, you know that this is again common sense and basic understanding of how do you make changes within a company successful.
So,
It's
I mean,
always
this
about the
article,
behavior.
the fascinating thing about this, normally you would say, well, this is obvious. And normally this wouldn't be a story worth highlighting. And that's why maybe it also appears quite down the list of your articles. But in the now day and time that you have an article like this, I'm going to print this out and just take it to customers and say, look, that SAP News comes out with something that, we maybe also be talking about for decades, but also citing Toyota, Ecolab,
Yeah,
Bayer, some real big
big
ones, yeah.
ones. Yeah,
That they say, yeah, transformation needs people and change management is important. So every time I'm going to go to a project, they say, oh, we need to cut the budget. Let's get rid of change management. I'm going to pull this article out and say, look,
yes,
even SAP and the bigwigs say, don't do that.
yeah,
But
yeah,
we know what's going to happen. But
yeah,
that's why I'm very very happy to see this, and I must say I'm
yeah,
say chapeau.
yeah,
And this is something. This is it's not just a match. We should not think that with all this super AI, and that's what I was talking about. The business standard of needs people, the standard business where we take people a lot to change. So what I've
yeah.
just talked about, this article, it hits in exactly the same direction.
And just for the people listening that haven't been there from the very start, please find episode number 1 or 2 where we discuss the 4 key success factors of a BPM implementation, and you'll find there that number 4, the one of the big 4 key success criteria we call human affairs. This is exactly what that means. It's that last sentence in this topic that change management remains critical, with well-designed initiatives stalling if employees don't understand purpose or feel threatened. In other words, if you can't answer the question, what's in it for me, for each one of your employees in a big transformation, you're not going to succeed. That's
Yeah.
pretty much what that says. Cool. Well,
Um,
we I think. Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Russell.
No, 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 no. And again, the last sentence is fantastic. You have to really
It
mark
is.
that. If
I
employees
oh,
don't
can I?
understand purpose or feel threatened, this feel purpose is just
Yeah.
exactly what where process management seriously is the answer to help people understand how in such a complex, crazy world, how they fit in and give them an understanding of their value and their
Yeah.
purpose in this
Yeah.
organization.
So
And if we
I
have that,
highlighted
then
this.
it's
Yeah.
all right. Fantastic. Yeah.
Cool. And I think we have, so the last topic, we typically have five major categories in this. This, the first one is just an extension
Cool.
of what we just talked about.
Yeah,
So
true, true.
Tektronix Corp, digital transformation failure rate remains at 65% due to poor change management. 90% of executives who implemented ERP systems admit they didn't do enough to manage organizational change, leading to unforeseen costs. I mean, this has been researched for like 30 years, and we're still treating this like it's a
Is
surprise.
news. Top story.
Yeah, it's a top.
Top
I would
story.
almost, we should make that little thing instead of top story, we call it toy story, because that's how amateuristic this still sounds. But I mean,
Uh,
this is what it is, right? And I mean, that the whole AI thing, and something completely different, Russell. But on a side note, in the Netherlands, we have this conversation, this discussion going on in society at large. Is that the more AI you bring into the classroom, the less capable students are of critical thinking.
mhm.
And for me, this list of articles that we just went through is so symptomatic of that. Even though that effect hasn't trickled down yet, but still, I sometimes think like I'm surely not the only one with common sense. But then again, I mean, I've had experience firsthand in doing change management and um, doing the psychological side of organizational change. And so I, for me, it's much more clear that this needs to happen. But it always surprises me that it's just overlooked in major transformations.
Well, yes. Um,
Well, you had to think about that, yes.
yeah, but I just had this other thought because I think we always have to look at the dynamics of and this is still happening a lot on the driving forces when these big transformations happen with big system integrators. There's a lot of
Hmm.
pressure there. You have a big tanker. You see your monthly expense, your burn rate, and and with burn rate, it's like cash or money just
Cash.
being
Yeah,
you have the
a lot of
impression
money.
a lot of money being burned
Yeah,
and then there's this humongous pressure just to get it done, and I
yeah.
think there is something around the human nature on the human dynamics of the parties in these organizations that sometimes it's like you fall down back into the caveman like behavior
Captain Caveman. Yeah,
when things get say s- existential for the job of the project manager
yeah,
or for the,
yeah,
or for the person who said let's do it, it's going to be okay, and then all of a sudden you're not at 30 million, you're going up to 50 million, and everybody's the big numbers that start tumbling in. Nobody stays cool. Nobody
yeah,
stays cool.
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
and
I know,
and
I
and
know.
then there's people exploiting it that don't want things to run smoothly because they can. It's part of their business model to submit change requests because chaos, because the governance has just been neglected. Because it's part of. I would say it sounds bad, but it's part of the business model.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and so the dynamics in large transformations, and I think we don't have to look so much at the change management. And that's something I did with, Stefan Hauenschild, who was in the show once. We didn't look so much at change management from the perspective of the end users so much as, oh, how are they going to be
Hmm.
impacted in the job in procurement? But we said, no, no, let's have a look more at the change management from a perspective of people that get involved in the project as part of the project team, because it's always seen
Okay.
as something that is just like, yeah, the project's there, but these people are pulled out of their not day-to-day job, given twice as much work as before without any extra salary. They're sometimes displaced. I remember a
Mhm.
long time ago, I talked to an ex-colleague who said, yeah, I went to America 5 years to do the project supply chain. We really did a fantastic project. And I came back home and they didn't have a job for me anymore. So there's so many dynamics
Yeah.
around the project teams themselves, the way they partner up with externals, and they have to get this done. There's pressure from outside. So just look at the human dynamics within the transformation team. And
Yeah.
that's where you have to look into. So that's where you have to do change management, and that's where you have to do, a lot of communication, human affairs work before you even after 5 years say, oh, we're going to do the first rollout in Poland. Yeah. What has
Yeah.
happened in
Yeah.
them 5 years in the team and the dynamics there, that is where this capability to transform, that's what, where we're saying, it's not a project, it's a capability. The business capability
Yeah.
for transformation in the organization,
Yeah.
establishing that
Yeah. I
in a
agree.
way that you do not lose your cool, that you keep, that you say, this is the path we want to stay on. We need to, we need to take workarounds if there's a roadblock or anything like that. But we keep as a team, we keep our backs. We don't just start saying, oh,
Yeah.
ambush, and everybody jumps out and everybody runs in a different direction, but you stay consolidated as a crew to fight this through. And that's where I think a lot of um, I'm not saying there's misunderstanding. There's a lot of people with experience there, but people are not looking at that enough, and they're not thinking about
Yeah.
how can we set up a resilient transformation team that does not fall into this default caveman behavior as soon as things get hot.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. And by agreeing, we need to wrap up this part of today's episode because I got some other stuff I would like to discuss with you. There's just
I'm
one
fine.
thing. Yeah, so there's one little thing that I found interesting, and very characteristic of AI. When I opened up this document, which has a mere 6 pages, I immediately got a message. This appears to be a long document. Shall I summarize it for you? And I go, like, 6 pages is not long. People will become lazy because of AI. It's incredible, and I don't want to be a pessimist on this. I love AI, but I also think that there are some unintended consequences that we need to take seriously. Otherwise, we're going to raise a generation of, well, lazy, empty shells.
Well,
There, I
and
said it.
exactly. And this one example is you now have AI writing your application, and you have an AI reading your application.
Yeah.
And then then all of a sudden there's going to be some really interesting constellations of people, like blind dates of people being
Yeah, but
employed.
listen,
They're saying,
Russell,
what happened?
if AI writes my application and AI reads my application, that cancels each other out. Just let me talk to the hiring person without the freaking application. It's not needed. Boy, oh, I can get worked up on that one. Anyway, I'm gonna stop sharing with this whole documents thing. We've done that. I just want to look at you now. So I want to go back to Hamburg. You know that you're not going to get off the hook that easy with the first 2 minutes of this episode. I got word out, and I hear things left and right because I talk to the same people that you talk to. That something also went on after the conference in Hamburg.
Yeah, well,
Do you care to elaborate?
let's go. One thing after. So we had the short, and it was in the middle of actually the event. So there was
Yes.
still something happening. What they did is they got some round tables together where, well, actually we didn't have a table. We did have chairs, so we stood around in the foyer where the other ones had all seats. But that was okay too. And so with the our beloved guys from the Prozessphilosoph,
Yeah. Cool.
and there was a real interesting, very engaged set of people that we were discussing around how in 2026 can innovation and incubators and rapid prototyping work. So it's very much down the automation path. But I thought it was really interesting because in one of the keynotes, they were talking about, say, the speed of transformation and the technology just out of this pyramid of all the elements, the technology just kind of like moves forward,
Mhm.
and the rest doesn't manage to follow. And it was very nice PowerPoint animation there. Just
Of
joking.
course.
And And but it fit to what we were talking about before about, now everybody's talking orchestration where we haven't even got the foundations in place. Coming down, wrapping it up, ultimately, I think we came to the conclusion that you cannot always, with these enterprise, big organizations and transformations, it takes time and not the whole organization can wait. So you
Hmm.
have to have a two speed. You have to create space where things can happen fast and you can fail and you could prototype or pilot, but whatever you want to call it. And and it's a cultural aspect as well that you want to bring this innovative thinking in and not block it and say, no, the rollout will bring this feature. And they
Hmm.
said, when am I going to get this rollout? They said, in 5 years. That's the roadmap. Asia in 5 years. Now we're doing here, there. I said, and you can't wait. So we have to live in a world of uncertainty. You cannot have just this plan and the roadmap. You need it, but it's not in itself
Yeah.
enough. And I
Yeah.
thought that was really interesting. How do you cater for, let's say, without creating a joint venture and a startup or anything like that, but within your organization, create room for this. So exactly the opposite to what I normally think, said, oh, all these Excel solutions and all these little apps and this crazy application landscape that is totally unmanaged. How can you still create a governance, but provide like a self-service or a space where
Yeah.
innovation and incubation can happen? And that was actually the key topic. Loved it. And
All
it's
right.
given me a lot to think about how companies can let loose to a certain extent. Yeah.
Yeah.
And not
All
just
right.
be super governed and super organized, because that also doesn't work. It's restraining some creative force that we have. And around AI, it's also a topic. How do you deal that without everybody having like hidden little solutions that they're using like the old Excel solutions
Yeah.
everybody had
Yeah.
for doing their detailed planning. And then after they've done the detailed planning, they somehow copy the data into SAP. But how do you really more or less embrace these fantastic ideas and then work on finding out how could you even make a best practice out of this and bring this into the real productive environment, but also shutting things down that are not good. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. You need to
if
learn
they're
how to
not
stop things.
compliant, and then yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
So that was that topic, and
That was
then
that. Yeah.
then we finished up in a hotel room, four men in a hotel room. That
I'm
sounds
I'm not
bad.
sure where this is going, but yeah.
Mirko Klomberg said, as he did a podcast recording with the Prozessverlag.
Is that how
I
we call it nowadays?
wasn't
Okay,
there,
good.
but Daniel and Matusz and Mirko, so some real veteran, fantastic German podcasters sitting there, me on the sofa. We went to Matusz's room because Daniel's wasn't tidied up. So he said, "No, I tried to do it tonight." So we know now.
Somehow I would have expected that the other way around, to be very honest.
Yeah, his excuse was he had all the equipment for the podcast. That's why he didn't tidy his room up.
Ah,
Anyway,
yeah, okay.
so
Yeah, yeah. All right.
and we had a great discussion. The topic there was, and that comes back to some of the topics we talked about. We talked about this, like the digital twin, they're like the enterprise graph that has to, it's
Hmm.
the current methodologies like BPM and AI are just one view on it from a very specific, let's say, peer group for a
Hmm.
specific use case. They are two, and there's still the struggle of actually getting together, creating a joint view and model. And we were thinking about the event. And we say, yeah, but this is the BPM event, and everybody here is all talks the same, and they all agree, and they're all process management, let's say, nerds.
Yeah, big in crowd. Yeah.
Exactly. But why, where is the event or the community? How can we manage to get the community to get broader
Okay.
and
Yeah.
more inclusive, more diverse in bringing in other thought models and maybe even best case, even start to communicate, collaborate and work on a different model, say the best
Hmm.
of both worlds and expanding the model, the German word Völkerverständigung, so how can we manage to bring together different cultures, yeah,
Hmm.
and diverse thinking, and not always finish up in events that are like, let's go to this event, and it's just the just the SAP kind of
Yeah,
like,
yeah, 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 yeah.
you know,
I agree.
like group, and then that, and the BPM people getting together here, and that's so we really discussed that for a long time. We were thinking of, so yeah, that, and I think we all went out and said, yes, we have to think about in the community, that are there, in the networking, in the exchange, maybe in the events. We have to take this with us and say, how can we broaden this? Even the
Yeah.
BPM events sometimes are all process mining or all automation or all process management. So even in BPM,
Oh, yeah,
a
absolutely.
lot
Yeah.
of the communities and tools and events that happen, they are already even there. You have like two or
Yeah.
three or four stacks of different thought directions
Well,
that then stay with each other.
so the interesting thing is that there is this international conference on BPM, let's say the academic conference that takes place every year, that used
Mm,
to have most of that together. And then they spun off ICPM from that, the International Conference on Process Mining. So that got its own conference, which I still think, I mean, I get it. Why? But even when you go to the regular international conference on BPM, there is still 60% mining. So
mm,
like if you split them up, then you split them up. Or you just bring them together. But and in this case, they decide to split them up. I mean, there is the BPM summit in Frankfurt, which is at least vendor agnostic. So you have all the vendors there.
mm,
They all have booths lined up next to each other. So you can go one by one by one if you want to do a good comparison. It's very good for customers. It might not be as good for the vendors, but even there, the automation and the BPM people went into separate tracks during the day.
mm,
So there is very
really.
little cross contamination, so to speak. And I agree with you that if you want to take a more, let's say, holistic view on what is needed to get a digital twin up and running, because ultimately that's what we're talking about, you need enterprise architecture, you need orchestration, you need process management, you need process mining, you need, well, whatever you can, data management, you need all of that together. But
Yeah.
they all have developed their own little language that is not always understood by the rest.
Mm,
And from that perspective, I think when we did the conversation before we started recording, we talked about a forum. A forum might be an interesting concept to say maybe we can get something together like a, well, just pitch it on the spot, a digital twin forum or maybe a foundational transformation forum, whatever the name is, where we have multiple viewpoints available in the same room. Because I think
mm.
that if we have a good enterprise architect delivering a presentation, a lot of BPM folks, process management and orchestration, can learn from that, and vice versa. But we seem
Yeah,
not
and
to do that that much.
interesting that the last Software AG is a company that, I don't know,
Yeah, we used to know that.
you
Yeah,
heard of it?
yeah,
Okay, yeah.
Aris, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Aris, yeah. Now
Yeah,
called
yeah, now called
Aris.com.
Aris
Yeah.
GmbH.
Okay, so the last partner meeting I went to was in Dublin, and that was actually shortly before they sold Alphabet.
Okay,
And
yeah.
so just let's do a bit of nostalgia. Come on.
Yeah, yes, come on, let's do that. Full
And so over
disclosure, I
all them
worked for
years,
them.
they within a company that had two stacks, where Aris for many years also had or still has a lot of enterprise architecture capabilities for
Yeah,
modeling and
yeah,
documenting,
yeah, I
and
know.
with workflows you could do and reporting and dashboards you could do much more as well. But then they acquired Alphabet, and they over all them years that they had Alphabet in their stack, they
They
hardly
tried, I can tell you that.
hardly.
They tried, but somehow they never managed.
No, and I was there, and they had some separate tracks for Alphabet, and I went there because I was really curious and interesting, and they were talking a lot about project portfolio management. Where I said, "Well, that's transformation." So that really is,
Yeah,
they really have a lot of topics that are so near to what typically you would maybe do in RS, and I was it was so fascinating to see that still, because some people have said no, but I'm enterprise architect, and my choice or my weapon of choice or poison or whatever you want to call it is Alphabet. Then they were just in that track, bam, and they I wouldn't say they didn't mix at all, but they didn't mix
yeah. No, but
a
I mean,
lot.
let's
So
be
even
honest.
there, it was just bizarre over so many years how little they managed to bring together a methodology. And from a business model, they weren't even interested in going down that path. And so for a lot of years, then the capabilities in RS were just neglected, or they were just implemented. And as soon as the guy said, "I'm enterprise architect," they said, "Oh yeah, we've got Alphabet. just buy that. Again, you have to go down to the deeper level of how people sell, and there's a different rationale than just, hey, you and me thinking, wouldn't it be great to have a unified, happy world where there's peace all over and everybody talks one language? But I still think we have to believe that and we have to work on it for a
Yeah.
better world.
But just two little side notes on that. I think if you move from Darmstadt, where Software AG was located at the time, if you move a little bit south, you get to Waldorf, where SAP sits. And
Yeah.
they have LeanIX and they have Signavio. And I think that they have exactly the same problem that Software AG had, is that they also don't drink that much coffee together, is my feeling.
But they are very much thinking about, and with Khan together, about the tool chain,
Okay.
and so
Well, that's
they
good.
are I think the driving force again is to say, if we want to go up to the next level, for example, using a framework like Joule to really tap into all of these worlds, then we have to have. I do believe they will be working
Okay.
on a somehow, let's say, a common meta model to also deploy the AI framework.
Okay. Well,
But
that would be good.
we know internal, those are people,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
course, everybody knows the people at SAP, that of course there are forces
Yeah.
pulling in the other direction.
Yeah. Oh, there always are.
Because ultimately it's also because of the overlap, there will always be a bit of a claim, yes, but I can do that better. Or my approach is the more valid one for the context of deploying SAP. So if you look at the thing, but I think it's
But let me bring one thing into your memory, back from memory, Russell. It was September 2024, I think, and I was in Krakow on the international conference of BPM, and you were at home, and we did two shorts, I think, on the merger of Mega Hopix with Biz Design and Alphabet, right?
mm,
And we talked with Mark Greger about that later on as well, if you remember. I would like actually to revisit that topic one day and see, because Alphabet is enterprise architecture, Biz Design is enterprise architecture, Mega Hopex is process modeling, process management. How well did they do in merging that? Because I'm not sure how you think about this, but I haven't heard anything from them lately.
good point.
Yeah. So, I
So
mean,
yeah.
let's find out.
Yep, and
So,
bringing
yeah,
and especially use cases where they brought together, if you do it in a tool and then you sell the tool and they said you can use this and this, and then there's two departments not really talking to each other. One of them does the architecture in the tool and the other one does that. Also, you're not helped. So it would be great to see
true.
use cases where people, even if they use two different tools and have come together, where we have a lot of integration scenarios between BPM tools and enterprise architecture tools, where there's a lot of thought gone in there beyond the case of, as I had that one picture of the Glinicker Brücke where the spies were exchanged. And I
Oh, yeah,
used
yeah,
that in
yeah,
a,
yeah.
I had a meeting with Lena X and Signavio at the time, and I showed them this site. I said, from my understanding, this is the way you go about integration. You have a Glinicker Brücke and you exchange the applications against the processes or the capabilities
Yeah,
against this,
yeah,
and then you turn around and you part ways.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a nice
But
analogy.
there are cases that are more aligned and
Yeah,
more aligned. I'm saying still to see that the governance over, let's say, an integrated governance that really touches all these elements in a cycle. I think there's companies that also are managing that as well. So where you come from your process requirements over to then the application portfolio that supports these capabilities, to a decision board that then says, will we go down this path of changing the process in the context of a certain application or vice versa? So I think we should go out and look, and why this will be helpful, because these companies see that they need a solution for a real problem
yeah,
in their day-to-day, let's say, transformation change request management. And most probably the ones that will do it successful, they say it's not about the tool.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
it's more about the process of change, and everybody has their own world where I need to manage my application portfolio and my capabilities. I need to manage my processes. But if I say this is the problem, we need to get our act together on how we collaborate in this ever-changing circle of changes to applications and capabilities and the processes, then we make it happen. And then and then you say, yes, but if you have a purpose and
yeah,
you have have an objective and a purpose that you're working on, then you find a solution that can be very simple and pragmatic. And then all the, let's say, the religious preachers of methodology are just say, we don't care about that because we found a solution how we can live and work together in harmony, period. And that's what
Yeah.
it's all about.
Yeah.
So let's look at
Absolutely.
some use cases. Let's
Yeah.
anybody listening and has said,
Oh,
yeah, exactly. We don't talk methodology. We talk, how do we get our job done? And
so
here we have IT and process managers working well together. Bam. Let's
let's see if we can do some crowdsourcing here. So let's reach out to our audience, all 5 people of it, and see if you know a good enterprise architect that's open for a good conversation on this particular topic. Give us a name. We would love to have that person on the show and have an open and honest and candid conversation about how can we bring those two worlds closer together.
Yeah. And one shout out I need to do there in that context, because you're talking about the 5 listeners that we have. Yeah, or maybe 6. So, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to say his name because he may get in trouble, but he was saying he's a great podcast fan. And he said he listens to all these podcasts. And sometimes when he gets back home, he stays in the driveway to finish the episode before he goes inside. And I said, man, that's fantastic.
That
So,
is
I said, oh,
wonderful. We
wow.
applaud that.
Yeah, we applaud that. Yes, and he doesn't just do it with our podcast. He listens to a lot, but he says, and I would say, "Wow, that's a podcast. That's a fanboy."
It's
So shout
brilliant.
out.
It's absolutely true. You know
You
who you
know
are.
who you are, and thanks for listening.
Very good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that turned out to be slightly longer than we anticipated, but it was so much good fun for this episode. Russell, thank you very much for all of your thoughts and ideas and feedback and input, and the
Likewise.
travel and the endurance you had to go through to travel up to Hamburg in the snow and back. We really appreciate that. And to our listeners, I say thank you for listening. Join in and tune in next week. Like and subscribe if you would like, and see you then. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye bye.